Greetings, book lovers everywhere. I'm E-Train and welcome to E-Train Talks. And today, I'm talking with Lynne Kelly about her award-winning and heartwarming novel, Song for a Whale, along with Everything Books. Lynne is a sign language interpreter, more on that later, a talented author, mom of 2 dogs and 1 human, a lover of books and reading, and has even been a special education teacher in the past. She's certainly a jack of many interesting trades. And now, I'm so excited to welcome Lynne Kelly to E-Train Talks. Thanks so much for joining me today, Lynne.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm so glad we got to connect today so we can talk about books.
I'm super glad as well. I love Song for a Whale. I know that so many others who are listening right now, they loved it as much as I did. And now, into the first question.
Okay, thank you.
The main protagonist in Song for a Whale is Iris, a deaf 12-year-old girl who's feeling lonely and kind of isolated. But things begin to change for her when she learns of Blue 55. A whale who isn't able to communicate with any other whales. Blue 55 feels disconnected and isolated like Iris, and knowing there's another being out there going through what she's going through inspires Iris and sends her on an important and meaningful quest. And I'm sure our listeners would love to know who or what was the inspiration behind Blue 55.
It was actually the real whale, who is much like the fictionalized whale Blue 55 in the novel. I found out there is a real whale out there known as the lonely whale. In real life, he's called the 52 hertz whale, or Blue 52, because he sings at a frequency much higher than other whales do. So he sings at around this 52 hertz frequency. For us humans, it is a low sound. It's a low note of a tuba. But for a whale, that's apparently so screechingly high, they can't understand him. They're usually much lower than that. And I was fascinated right away when I found out about this so-called lonely whale. I was surprised I hadn't heard of him before because he's been out there since the late 1980s that we know of, maybe longer. And all we know about him is the unusual song he sings. So no one has seen him in real life. We don't have pictures or video. We only know because of these underwater microphones, those hydrophones that Iris learns about in the story, that record the sounds of the ocean and ocean life. And, someone recognized that's a whale song, but it's one that's really strange. So I couldn't stop thinking about this weird whale and why does he sing a song like no other? And it all started there. And I think as writers, we look for those ideas that don't let us go. And that lets us know maybe we need to write about this and maybe others will feel that same connection.
And did you do much research before or during the writing of Iris's story? And if so, what kinds of things did you research?
Oh, yes. I'm someone who can just continue researching indefinitely. So at some point I have to just stop myself and say, I probably know enough to write this now. I can look up more later and fix that later. So I do enjoy the research part of it. So that's one thing about writing is you can choose something that you're interested in, and then you have fun. You have some fun learning along the way too. So yes, I did research whales, even though this one is a fictitious one. This particular whale is made up, but I still wanted him to behave as a whale would. Yeah. I looked up hybrid whales because some scientists have a hypothesis, a good guess, that maybe the real life lonely whale is a hybrid of a blue whale and a fin whale. So he would have parents of 2 different species. Maybe that's why he sings an unusual song. So I read more about that. I emailed a few scientists who have studied this also and have listened to this whale song. And the best research I did, though, was shortly after I started writing this. Here's where my 2 careers collide in a nice way. I saw an announcement for the need for a sign language interpreter to go on an Alaskan cruise for a deaf couple taking the cruise. So it was only about 2 weeks away. And, like Iris's parents had said, that's not something you just, leave and take off to Alaska and get on a cruise without much planning. But I thought I have to do it. This is too perfect. I have to go because I didn't know much of the story yet, but I knew she has to get from Houston, near where I live, to the Pacific coast and close to Alaska. How could she do that? Well, maybe on an Alaskan cruise. So I was working there for a week. I enjoyed that. It was a great time to be away from the heat of Houston and be sailing past glaciers. But the best part was I got to see the sights my characters would be seeing. So it really helped me with those setting details and just to see what is it like to be on this cruise ship for a week, and what are some of these little towns we'll be stopping in. What do those look like?
Yeah.
And what is it like to sail past glaciers and to see humpback whales leaping next to the ship? So that was the best research I did. I always read books or read articles online. I, talk to people who know more than I do, in this case about Wales or Alaska, and in sign language also. But the best research is if we get to see the actual place that we're writing about, and then talk to people, who have more of that experience, like working on a cruise ship.
Well, it must have been super fun just sailing on an Alaskan cruise, visiting all those different places, and it probably just motivated you, like, wow, Iris is gonna love this, maybe, and like it's gonna just be, it makes for a great story.
That was the most valuable thing, because I think we don't always get to visit the setting that we're writing about. Ideally, we can, because there are things that we'll pick up that we would never learn from an article or a book. And I did that cruise again a year later. So by then the story was pretty much written, but I was revising it. And so doing that again, I knew more of the questions I needed to ask. And that helped me firm up some of those setting details I still needed to get in there.
So I read that you studied sign language and eventually worked as a sign language interpreter. So do you still practice signing, and what do you like most about it?
Oh, yes, I do still interpret sign language. I do a variety of things, which is one of the things I like about it. Some people who work as interpreters, they do want to go to the same place every day, and they want that consistency, and they can do that. They can work at one school, for example. I like more variety, so I might do something like doctor appointments, or I do some college classes, and ideally maybe something interesting that I never did learn before, or that I'd forgotten. If it's some interesting history or science class, then again, I'm learning as I'm working. That's my favorite thing too. So, and then sometimes I do go to elementary schools, or it could be someone's meeting at work. There are all kinds of settings interpreters can work in, and so I do like getting that variety. And I like too that it is something that's a never-ending education. Anyone who knows more than one language knows that you can learn a little bit to have a simple conversation, or you can keep learning it forever. There's always more to learn. There are always, more words that we can learn, or more ways to express something.
Yeah,
and so that's another thing I like about it.
Have your experiences as a sign language interpreter, have they really influenced your writing at all?
I hadn't thought about the sign language interpreting influencing my writing, but it could be that that helps with dialogue. Since I am used to listening to someone else speak in a conversation, or say a presentation they're doing, or a lecture, and I need to get that message across in a way that matches, what they intend to say, and try to express it as this person would, as this speaker would. So it could be because of that, and I'm really used to listening to dialogue. And then when I'm interpreting, say when I'm voicing for a deaf person who's signing, I want it to sound really natural. I want it to sound like they would if they were the one speaking. So I think because of that, I have learned to pick up what dialogue sounds natural and what doesn't. So that could certainly inform the writing. Then when I'm writing dialogue, I'm used to listening for what sounds natural.
What are some themes that you wish your readers would take away from Song for a Whale and all the books that you write?
Those are all good ones that you mentioned. And of course, when I started writing this, it was in 2015 that I learned about this lonely whale. Of course, I had no idea that in 2020 and beyond, themes of isolation, the need for communication, the need for connection would become so important. Of course, they always were, but we were all impacted by those things in 2020 and up till now, being separated, feeling isolated, trying to reach out and connect to others when we can't see them face to face. So those are in there that maybe readers will pick up on now, even though I was writing it before all of that. So always there are times that we feel isolated. And I think that that's a way that books help us feel less lonely, because when we are feeling down, if we're sad or feeling left out or feeling lonely, we can feel like we're the only ones who've ever gone through this, or we're the only ones who felt that way before, which is even more isolating. But then in books, we see other people experience this too. Of course, the books we read, we're probably not going to go on a journey, like this particular character did. Their experiences might be unusual ones, but there are feelings that are universal, and that's something I try to get across too, because I have had to work on how to show characters emotion. That was a weakness of mine that I found early on, just hard for me to express. And so that's something I worked on most, is trying to get the emotions to come through on the page. Because I think that's what we remember most in a story, and that's what we connect to. And that can make us feel less alone too, just seeing that other people have this experience also.
My next question is, without giving away any spoilers, what do you think Iris would be up to now?
Oh, yes. I would like to think that she is a lot happier than she was, that she has learned that she can speak up for herself when she needs to. When, she's known all along, there's the community out there for her she needs to be part of. So I like to think that she has found that, and she is enjoying interacting with some new friends.
And I've not yet read your novel Chained yet. I really want to. But I did some research on you, and I learned more about the storyline, and I've put Chained on my to be read list. And just, it sounds like another meaningful tale that captures a heartfelt connection between a tween and the animal world. So will you share why you chose to write about kids and their relationship with animals in both Song for a Whale and Chained?
Yes, and at first, I love what you said about connecting to the character in Song for a Whale. That's what I aim for, and I think what every author aims for is a character that you're still thinking about after closing the book. That's a sign that we've written a strong character that feels like a real person. So I'm so thankful you had that experience. And also with writing Chained, this is one too that started with an animal that I'd heard about. So for each of these, I started with an animal and then thought, okay, who's the character who would connect with this animal? And so in this case, and it's what got me started as a writer too, because Chained was the first thing that I wrote. So in that case, I had heard that if a young elephant is captured, for say a circus show, some kind of performance, it'll struggle really, really hard to break free. And then when it gives up forever. So then you could have, decades later, this fully grown elephant still held in place with this little rope or chain that it could easily break away from if only it knew it was strong enough. But it failed at that once, so it's not going to try that. And so, of course, the speaker's point when I heard this at a presentation was, don't be like an elephant if you fail at something. And yes, if this is true about them, I love elephants, but that's a way to not be like them if they do give up once or give up forever after failing one time. So I kept thinking about this elephant. So again, it was an idea that wouldn't let me go. And this is when I was teaching, and I had students around 3rd through 5th grade. And I thought at first, that could be an interesting story to write down about this elephant who could only get home if she broke free from this chain that holds her in place. Home is just out of reach. And I could tell that to my students at school. Maybe it would be an interesting story to illustrate success and failure and persevering. And then I thought, oh, maybe it has a bigger audience. Maybe I could make this into a real book and tell this as a story that could be published. So I'll figure out how that gets done. And so it all started from there. And it turned out to be a 6-year journey. I didn't know that going in, that from idea to publication would be a 6-year journey, but glad I got into it and wrote it anyway. And so from there, I found critique groups so I can meet with other authors and get feedback on the pages I was writing, and just went from there, not really knowing what's going to happen from one chapter to the next, but having an idea how this would end. And I had her keeper then, so this little elephant who's caught for this sort of rundown circus. And so I came up with the character Hostin, who is a 10-year-old who takes a job caring for this elephant, and they become very close friends. And he knows pretty soon he's trapped at this place also. Of course, not literally chained up like the elephant is, but not allowed to leave. So these two friends have to work together to get out of this place and get back to their own homes.
My next question is, I'm sure everyone listening, including me, I'm like super curious. We're all curious to know if you have any other writing projects or middle grade, YA, any books in the works.
I do. I'm always working on something new, and I'm hoping really soon to send my editor my next book. So nothing official yet, since of course my editor has to see it and say, yes, this is good. Let's make this your next book after Song for a Whale. I think it's coming along well. I'm revising it now. I ended up skipping a lot of the world building, so a lot of the things about the setting and some of the minor characters. So now I'm having to do that during this revision. So nothing official yet, but it is about birds, and it does take place in Texas the whole time. So I'll tell you that much about it, and about birds that are quite endangered. And I've written another one about a kid who takes care of an injured octopus one summer. So hopefully those will both be out there at some point for you to read.
Now, my next question is, was there someone who inspired you to pursue writing? A parent, author, teacher, or role model?
You know, my grandmother was a writer. She liked to write a lot of poetry. But writing is not something that I had thought about doing, even though I had seen her writing, and I'd read her poetry that she wrote, and I had always loved books, but I never thought of being an author as something I would do, that I would take on as a career. So it was only when I got that idea for Chained that I thought, oh, maybe I could write a book also, and I'll figure out how to do that. So I had a lot to learn about writing and about publishing, even though I was always reading books. And so for me, it just started from there. So yeah, not anything that I had thought about growing up. It was only when I was an adult and working as a teacher. And of course, I was surrounded by books then, so that probably helped. And I was, with students who were of the age that I was writing for. So it only started there for me.
And now, time for my final question, the question I ask every single one of my guests. If you could be or meet any literary character, fictional or real, who would it be and why?
Oh, my first thought was Ramona from the Beezus and Ramona books, the Beverly Cleary books. But then I thought, I don't know, that might get exhausting. She seems like a really fun character. Maybe she could come over for dinner. I might want to sit at her table, like if she's at the kids' table instead of with the adults. I think that would be fun. But maybe in small doses. Another would probably be Fern from Charlotte's Web. That was always a favorite of mine. And of course, she's a girl who loves animals, so I think we would get along.
And my guest today has been award-winning middle grade author Lynne Kelly, who wrote the meaningful, heartfelt novel Song for a Whale. It has been such a special opportunity and experience talking to you about your writing journey today, Lynne. Thank you so much for joining me.
I enjoyed it so much. Thank you for having me.